All right, I think we're going to get started. So before we jump into the agenda, I just wanted to.
You gotta call the meeting.
I have to call the meeting to order. And that's it, right?
Correct.
Yes, and so note that tonight.
Sorry. I need to note that we are being recorded by the Westwood Media Center. I should ask if anyone else is recording. Nope. Okay. So just Westwood Media Center. Before we get into the agenda, I just wanted to update everyone. At the last school committee meeting, we voted, because Heath retired and stepped off the school building committee, we voted Lemma onto the school committee, onto the SBC, so welcome. And we also voted Michelle, our procurement guru, onto the SBC. So this is the team as it stands today. Today, Peter cannot join us, Josepha cannot join us, and Carol cannot join us as well. So jumping right in, we wanted to give a quick update on the OPM search and the work of what the selection subcommittee has been doing. As we mentioned last meeting, we did release the RFS out to the community. Between the release of the RFS and when we received proposals, we developed a scoring rubric for when we got the proposals in. So we then received 12 proposals, which was great. We were very excited by that number. And the subcommittee individually ranked each proposal, reviewed it, and used our scoring rubric to rank each one. We then met together and came up with really the top five firms based on the scoring rubric that we wanted to invite in for interviews. Those firms were Arcadis, Pink, CMS, Compass, and PWA. So they also had an opportunity to, well, all of the firms had an opportunity to tour the school. They went through Hanlon, so I think some of them took advantage of that. On Tuesday, we conducted the interviews, and the format of the interviews was each firm gave us a 15-minute presentation, and then we had a 35-minute Q&A session. We asked each firm the same questions. We got through all of them except for one with most firms. One of them we actually did, or maybe two of them, we actually did get through all of the questions. I think I'm speaking for myself, I was impressed with the caliber of all five of the firms. The presentations were great. The people that represented the firms were very good. They actually, all the firms brought the people who would be working on this project, so that was very helpful. So we got to meet the people who, we would be working with for the next 4 years. Once the interviews concluded, the selection subcommittee met as a group again and began deliberations and discussion about how we would rank the firms. Based on that, we came up with 2 top contenders, which were Compass and CMS. We did not come to a recommendation that night on Tuesday night because we did want to run references for the firms. So yesterday and today, Michelle, Emily, and I have been calling around and getting references for the firms. And what we plan to do tonight is to update the selection subcommittee on the references that we received, have the selection subcommittee continue the deliberations, and then take a vote on who we would recommend to present to the entire school building committee. So that's a summary of where we are. Does anyone have any questions? Nope? Okay. So why don't we start the subcommittee discussions, even though we're all here, the subcommittee discussions that we're continuing from Tuesday. So Emily, do you want to present on what you learned from your...
Yeah, sure, thanks. I'm just going to take a moment to note that I think we're learning a lot. And one of the things that we're learning is that the MSBA requires a great deal of process. So we're doing a lot of that, which I happen to be a process person, so I think that's fantastic. When I saw that I had to read this many pages of proposals and score them, I was feeling a little less enthusiastic. But I think it has been very thorough, and I want to thank Maya and Michelle, because you are the people who have been leading us very diligently through every step. So that has been great.
We could just briefly
tell us who we should know who the subcommittee is, but.
Yeah, so the subcommittee was, so,
Raise your hand.
I guess we can raise our hands. There we go, here we are.
So John, Pam, the four of us, Michelle. That's it, right?
Yeah, so it's been great. And I want to thank, my fellow subcommittee members, because I think that as a group, consensus was really emerging at the end of our deliberations of our last meeting, and I just wanted to have a little bit more time to mull it over and to talk to some folks, so that has been great. It just seemed like a really important decision. So I did call around, and basically I spoke to several people who are leaders in school districts who have worked with both of these companies. And I mean, bottom line, I would say that I heard wonderful things about, everyone, from everyone I talked to. And I was, really digging in, trying to ask some hard questions, and people were like effusive in their praise. So that, I think, is the great news, that we have a decision to make between wonderful candidates. Specifically in the case of CMS, I heard a lot about their responsiveness, their attention to detail, their availability, their communication, their ability to work well with the community. It's very positive. In the case of Compass, I similarly heard how hands-on they are, how easy to work with they are, that they're on top of details and logistics. I will say that, I think from their presentation that Compass has a lot of recent experience with school projects, and school projects that are right in the area. So they just finished an elementary project in Hopkinton. They're finishing an elementary project in Natick in September. They are working on a middle school project in Natick. They're working on an elementary building in Wellesley. And I learned that though the Wellesley project isn't done, Wellesley has just contracted with them to do another elementary building project through the MSBA, which seemed like a ringing endorsement. So reputations are strong. In the case of Compass, I was able to talk with people who had worked with every individual who was on their proposed team for us. I wasn't able to do that. I just wasn't able somehow to locate that for CMS. So, for example, I was able to speak with the superintendent who has worked with the proposed construction site manager who would work on our project, which seemed important to me because at some point, that's somebody that we will interface with every day on the site, that, a principal like Sarah would have to be talking to about logistics and how it impacts learning.
And that was Emily?
Yes, that was Emily. And I heard very positive things about that relationship and, their attention to thinking about the educational program. So that was great. So, bottom line, I didn't talk to anyone who had any hesitation about working again with either company.
Yep, I left a number of messages and was only able to reach the superintendent of Burlington. And he said that this is for CMS, and again, glowing praises. He basically said that it was a very smooth project. CMS, again, I heard about the responsiveness. I think that came through for CMS, very much so. But, great process, great communication, would work with them again. It was very similar to what you said. I traded messages with another principal at Danvers, and then for Compass, I wasn't able to reach anybody. But I think you had better luck than I did, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, so I was able to reach a few people on Compass, and again, with both very glowing reviews on both of them in terms of knowing what they were doing, great process, great communication, responsiveness. I mean, nothing we could ask for additionally. Compass, I was able to, again, be able to talk to other towns that had worked with the individuals. It took me a bit. I was able to find only one person for CMS. Some of the projects for CMS, they listed the project lead was not the individual that came in for the interview. So I was able to find one person. one town that had worked with Neil, and they gave him a great review, so that was good. But that was the only thing. The other CMS reviews were very, very positive, did a great job, that type of thing. So both companies super strong. Compass had more data points, and like Emily said, more schools and more schools recently. So whereas CMS had a lot of work, a little smaller, it looked like they take 2 to 3 big jobs a year, and they seem to do them very well. And so that's why we probably didn't see the depth of the specific individuals, because they don't take as many jobs in a year.
I would just like to make sure that the full group knows that what we found, we as a community have not been out in the school building process for quite a while, right? Almost 20 years. We've not worked with the new MSBA. And in that time, there's been thousands of schools done across the state, I guess. So every firm that we had as a finalist had multiple school projects, multiple work with the MSBA, lots of good projects. I think we all felt really good about that. Just where we, again, as a community, have not really been out there doing school buildings. There's a lot of it going on and a lot of good firms, and we got those firms to apply for this job. So we felt good about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to sort of expand on that point, I think it was clear from the way that the firms were speaking to us that the MSBA really drives this project, and that they sort of kept saying to us, well, the MSBA will want you to do this, and they'll want you to do that, and they'll want us to do this, to the point where it became very clear, at least to me, that whoever we hire needs to have very strong MSBA experience, because it seems that that's really going to be driving this process a lot. So I think we should just open it up for additional discussion. Yeah.
So I did some checking as well.
Oh,
I called
great.
Selectman Dedham, and he had worked with CMS, actually with both, and he said, either way you go, they're both excellent and reputable. I called John Cronin, who's the chair of the PBC. We've, 10, 12 years now, we've been on the PBC together. We've worked with a number of different OPMs, and in the last 2 or 3 products, it's been Compass. And I talked to Tom Erickson, who's also an OPM, that's what he does, and he's on the PBC board. I'm sure Peter would vibe it. So I wrote down what Tom wrote because it was pretty good. He said, in construction management of public projects, you should never move away from proven success. Compass has proven success on multiple projects with Westwood and with the PBC. And we, the PBC, strongly advocate for them. So that, and they're not the only ones that we've gone through, so they have no problem explaining why they didn't like other people.
Well, as I've been reflecting, I mean, I do think that's a really important point, right? I feel like we have 2 candidates that are both very good candidates, and we're hearing wonderful things from, all their references. And I haven't worked with Compass, but Compass has worked on 2 projects, I think, in
They
Westwood.
did the fire station, the police station, and they helped us with some other small projects as
Helped you
well.
with the
Start to
library
finish,
ceiling.
2 full ones, start to finish.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
I mean, successful
So,
projects, as I
I've
understand
had
it.
personal experience with them. They were, out of the 2, I can recommend them personally.
Yeah. Well, and it feels like sort of all other things being equal, so to speak, when we have a company that the town has had a good relationship with, where things have been successful, that seems significant to me as I think about this.
Yeah, and I think also, I like the depth of bench with Compass. I
Yeah.
think that the people that they brought, it was very clear to me who was doing what. And I think they were very clear amongst themselves who was doing what. And with CMS, it was also clear, Kevin was our guy, and he was, I mean, everyone is raving about Kevin. I was just a little concerned that, it seemed to be Kevin and Neil, and I wasn't quite sure who else would be on the project for CMS. So, so I think the structure of the structure was a little less clear to me for CMS than it was for Compass. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm sure that they would provide the depth of bench. It just wasn't
And
readily.
They said
Yeah.
that the other guy was on vacation, so.
Yes, yeah, they did say
Yeah.
he was unavailable, the on-site guy.
And for the rest of the group, most of the people Emily called were her peers, superintendent. Most of the folks that I called, and for me, I talked to a lot of PBC chairs, so we want to actually get references and get opinions from two different perspectives. You know, they're both important, so just so you know, both of those came from different, we may have called the same town, but got different perspectives, and the nice thing was they were both strong.
I don't know if it ever would be an issue, but if people are so popular and so in demand, would there ever be a problem with, you know?
Capacity?
They're just so overwhelmed that they can do less than somebody, you know, so if they're all equal, it may not be an issue. Maybe they're just so talented, but the only concern I would have, it may not even be an issue. You know, one time, dealing with people that are that good, they could just be overwhelmed for a certain period of time.
That was one of the reasons that we felt it was important when they came in for the interview. They actually brought the people that were going to work on the project. So we've all sat through interviews where they bring their A-team and their folks that interview well, but those aren't the people that you're going to be working with day to day. In this case, for each company that came in, they were able to say, this person sitting to my right is doing this person to my left is doing this. So they were required in their proposals to make the commitment and assign people to specific jobs. So I'm sure for that reason.
Yeah, and we did ask also for availability, you know, what projects are you working on now? What is your availability for this project? And what percentage of your full-time job would you be devoting to this project? So we got pretty specific answers as to capacity. And I think both firms, at least it appeared to me, seem to be well aware of the project, are very thoughtful of the projects that they take, the projects that they bid on, the projects that they take, and how many they can handle at once.
But it is an interesting point, because
Yeah.
of the people, the firms that we interviewed, I mean, they range from like very big companies with like a national presence to, you know, like family businesses, right? So I think that is interesting to think about, sort of what kind of relationship do we want to have, and I've been thinking about that too. And I actually think the size of Compass, I think it's a good size. It's a local company. There is some depth to the bench, but but there is a bench.
Right.
Right, to go to if,
But it's not
something
one of these
happens.
huge companies that do
It's a bench
many,
house
many
stadium.
things in addition to this.
and that's something I heard when I talked to some of my peers who had done projects with other companies, larger companies. They said sometimes they had the experience of it being a bit of a revolving door, who was working on the project, or, you know, things got dicey and they expressed concern, and, you know, they would send over the varsity team for 5 or 6 days and then they disappear, and, you know, you
Right.
get somebody else, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, any more discussion? No? So I think if somebody wants to make a motion to recommend someone, we can then have that discussion about the specific motion. Yep.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept Compass as the OPM for this project. I'll second that.
Okay, discussion. Does anyone disagree?
So can I just ask, so Michelle, does it, you know, because it's always a bidding process, you know, this was the third time we used Compass, does that reflect on us with the state as favoritism, you know what I mean?
It doesn't in this case. What will be an issue with that is, you know, if Maya had said that this is a very structured process, and there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
And so they are looking for our background that says, you know, if we continued to just get 1 or 2 proposals and pick the same contractor, that would be an issue. We reached out, we got 12 proposals. They will actually see how we rank them, and for the rest of the group, there wasn't a huge spread. There really wasn't. I believe the max point was 115, and we might have had a couple firms in the 90s, so it was fairly tight. It really was, and so they'll see that. And I think if they thought that, you know, that kind of robust evaluation wasn't there, we could have an issue. We did have, and I'm sure the two of you guys found this, that when you call for references, there's a lot of people that are using the same firm over. There was one town that said,
I've done that 4 times.
yeah, I mean, most of them mix it up a little bit, but a lot of that is because they may pick a firm who kind of specializes in, say, public safety and that kind of thing, and they may switch over for something else. Or they're bigger than us and they do a bunch of projects at once, and so they may have different firms. So the credibility comes in the fact that we will have the documentation to say, you know, we scrubbed everybody, and this is why we came up with that. So, I mean, but I think it's a good question.
Yeah.
And so, I'm the one who stuck with CMS. I just like them because I felt like they were a smaller company who's in, you know, they're still building to become the size of Compass. But I think when you're that small, you are invested in everything because your entire future depends on how well you do. That was the reason I leaned towards CMS versus Compass. And I know, I see Tim all summer. Tim has a cottage right near mine down in Falmouth. So, understanding that, I just felt that, you know, at this time, I'm always, as a small business guy, I'm always thinking small business, so, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
that's-
No, and I agree, and that's a really valid point. I mean, I got the sense from CMS that they really wanted this job and that they would do an amazing job for us. And that is, I think we should not discount that at all. That's a big advantage. I think from my perspective, and it was a tough decision for me, but I think from my perspective, it came down to who had more MSBA experience. And really, that's what I was looking for. And it didn't really, I know it's wonderful that we had a good experience with Compass before, but to me, that's a reference, right? That's like a reference, the same as Norwood would be a reference. What it came down to me is that these guys know the MSBA in and out. In the interview, they were the ones who were talking about the education plan, which the school committee has to come up with, and which the entire design is based on. I think one other firm mentioned the education plan, whereas that's really the building block for the design. So I just felt that, I don't think we can go wrong with either firm, quite frankly.
It's
I
a
think
great position
It's a
to be in.
great position to be in.
Yep.
But at least for me, it came down to, who do I think will navigate this process with us the best, who has the most experience? And it just seemed from the interviews that Compass, and from the jobs that they've done, that Compass has that.
And as Emily said, they've done other schools that are similar to Westwood
Right.
District, where some of the firms had a lot of experience, but the school districts were a bit different, maybe more rural communities where they might have more land to do their buildings and that type of thing. But Compass seemed to have experience with similar districts.
Just for the counterpoint, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
If people get to this choice like we're making and say, okay, Compass has more, CMS will never get there.
I know,
So it's-
right?
Yeah, it is.
I know.
One of the things I asked, as I was talking to other towns, and I focused heavily on the MSBA experience as well, I wanted to know what hiccups they had run into, because there will always be hiccups in these projects. And to me, that's really where you get the great experience. And the folks I talked to with CMS, they were happy, they were very happy, terrific. But the feedback I got was and on their particular projects, they didn't have any huge hiccups on their school projects. They had some on their safety ones or other types of buildings, and they did well, that type of thing. But because this is so driven by MSB, I was really looking for some issues that had come up pretty heavily on a school project and that somebody had dealt with them. I was talking to Maya earlier, and I talked to a reference that they had, the day that they were pouring concrete to start the construction, they had their enrollment numbers change. And they had to add classrooms to their project, and he said, and they did it, and they handled, and Compass was right in with MSBA, worked the whole thing, and they still opened the school on time. So that's a bad day for somebody, but they just handled it. And that's, I think what all of us want is that when we hit those hiccups with MSBA's, is that somebody's there to guide us and just knows how to work straight through those. And it was a matter of more experience, so.
Okay. I put my 2 cents in, that's all.
I'm just going to
It
add
was
one
good
thing.
sense.
My experience with Compass over the 2 projects that we had in town, and the third one was the library ceiling, was that Tim himself is particularly good in dealing with difficult issues. If the project is going south a little bit, he has a sense of timing and how to get the project turned around and he knows what to say and how to push the contractor in a way that's gonna get them back on track as best they can. So, you know, when that problem happens, that's when projects are the biggest risk, and I just found him to be particularly good at it, compared to other projects we've had in town where, you know, the people in charge were not of the same caliber.
Anyone else?
Can people outside the subcommittee ask a question?
I don't have any issue with that.
Can we, is this public information about the bid, like what the cost was between the two?
We haven't negotiated fees yet.
Right, in this process, we get the proposals, and it's just the technical aspects of the approach. Once we decide on who we want to work with, then we go ahead and negotiate fee.
They don't, is that right? Wow.
There's no pricing in the RFP.
Because you want to select the person that's best for the job. You don't want to work. And then, in this case, we're not haggling over $10 here and there. So we'll negotiate the fee. If, for some reason, that a fee, the negotiations and the fee break down,
Yeah.
then you'd go to the next one.
Different than the
Yeah.
private sector.
Yes.
Fair enough. Thank you.
It is different. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, so we have a motion on the table to recommend Compass as the OPM for the school building project. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion is carried. So, the next thing on the agenda is the approval of the subcommittee minutes from Tuesday, from April 30th. I think they are in our binder.
Do we need-
I had sent John, oh,
We
sorry.
need to accept the minutes from our meeting on Tuesday?
Yeah,
That's
they're
what
all
we're
there
doing.
together.
All right.
They're all in the whole stack.
Yeah, so we're approving the minutes from the Tuesday meeting right now.
Okay.
So they should be in your binder. I had sent John a couple corrections. Under Arcadis, Sean Murphy should be Sean Sweeney. And then, I forgot what, the other one, it was just, it said that, under discussion, it said that Mr. Cummings, Ms. Parks, Ms. Plock indicated they would conduct reference calls on Wednesday. That should say Wednesday and Thursday. Those were my two comments. Are there any other comments to the minutes?
They're the same ones?
All right, can I get a motion to accept the minutes as revised?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion's carried. Okay. So we discussed the subcommittee recommendation for the OPM, and we approved that. So now we are back to the full school building committee. And the first thing on our agenda is to approve the recommended OPM. So I will need a motion from the school building committee to approve Compass as the recommended OPM that we will submit to the MSBA.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay. I guess I just did them both in one, right? All right. 2 in 1. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from February 27, 2019. Anyone have any comments? Again, these are in your binder. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from February 27th, 2019?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right. And now, what we've listed for you for us, for the school building committee, is the minutes of the OPM selection subcommittees meetings, April 11th, 2019, April 26th, and April 30th. So I need a motion to accept these minutes.
So moved.
Second. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain, because I wasn't at least one of them.
Okay. We have an abstention for one of them.
First one.
First one.
I think the motion is still carried.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So
Oh,
moved.
sorry, is there any additional business? Any additional business?
When is our next meeting?
Our next meeting is June 6th.
Can you maybe just could you just briefly give the, kind of the outline of the next 60 days? I mean, briefly, just a couple highlights. Or next 90, the next few months.
Yep. Okay, so we are submitting the OPM, so the recommendation for the OPM to the MSBA, maybe even tomorrow.
There's an entire package that we get to do, which
Oh,
is some
so
exciting
not tomorrow.
stuff. So I will let the MSBA know we chose, and then we'll start working on the package, which is due to them on the 8th.
Okay.
So,
And we are hopeful that we will be on their June 6th, June 3rd calendar. I don't think we will find that out until we submit the package. So, but if we're not on the June 3rd, then we'll hopefully be on the July. And at that meeting, they will approve our selection of the OPM manager, and we should be ready to sign the contract. So I think between now and then, we'll be negotiating the fee
yes.
with Compass.
So my recollection is that we would be beginning to negotiate the fee, right, in anticipation of the June 3rd meeting. Yeah.
Yes.
And such that after they take their vote and hopefully approve it, then it can be done, like executed immediately
Indeed.
following, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so the contract hopefully will be ready to go, and hopefully we'll get the approval, and then we sign the contract. After that, we move into the designer selection process, and we can talk more about that at the June 6th meeting. But this is where we pick the architect for the project. So I think the architect, again, is going to be key here, because we're going to be doing a lot of community engagement sessions. I think the architect will probably be front and center at those engagement sessions, so that'll be a factor to think about when selecting an architect, in addition to the vision and the design and the experience, particularly with schools that we're hoping to get. And we will be working on the RFP or RFS, whatever they call it, for that in the next few weeks as well. I don't think we have a timeline yet of what meeting we're aiming for. For this one, we knew we wanted to try and aim for the June 3rd meeting. I think maybe August or September.
I think it's September. So what's interesting, I mean, as much as this process was a very prescribed one by MSBA, the designer selection is even more so, and the MSBA has a greater role in that selection. And so they have a designer selection panel, and we get to send, I can't recall, if it's
3 people.
3 reps to that much bigger thing. So one of the things that we heard from Compass is that they would really help us through that process as well.
Prep for the meeting and.
Right, but my larger point there was that the timeline, I think, is going to be very much driven by whatever their dates are for their meetings.
Right. Similar.
Yeah.
To here, but, and then I think once the designer is on board, then, we'll sort of have a more idea of what the next phase will be. Clearly, that would be getting the contractor on board, at some point.
So before we adjourn, just so you know, so I will be replaced by Nancy.
Oh,
As
yes.
the chair will then step into this role, so just so you know. So it's been a pleasure working with you all.
Thank
job,
you,
Mike.
Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for your
Mike,
service.
yes,
where to find me.
you have been a fabulous member of our committee, so thank you. And welcome to Nancy at the next meeting. Any other questions? No? Okay, now may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? All right, thanks, everybody.